So we have the PSVR 2 rumors and specs, um, or rumored specs, I guess we can say. There's been no official announcement from Sony, other than, of course, that they're working on it.
And
But
they had the official announcement for the controllers, which
right,
is
that's right.
weird, but yeah, they showed the controllers
Yeah,
and they uh, said yes, we are working on this and it will be a thing. But any other specs beyond that is all postulation. So
that said, there appear to have been leaks. Someone or somewhere put out the word that Sony here's what the PSVR 2 is going to look like, on paper, on specs. And Justin, do you want to run over what those leaked specs look like?
yeah, sure. And there appears to have been some sort of event in the most recent future, in the recent days, that was either some sort of investor meeting or a developers meeting that might have aligned with GDC. But there were a group of developers that supposedly got some details, which would indicate that Sony is ramping up to start development and start a release schedule for the PSVR 2, whatever they're going to call it. There's a bunch of specs that I think, like we did with the Switch Pro, that we can speculate on. Of course, there's no way of guaranteeing that this is the case, but there's certain things that you can look at as far as evidence goes and say like, yeah, maybe this is something that they're interested in pursuing. So the things that we do know for fact is that there will be a PS5 version of the PSVR, PSVR 2,
Surprise.
yeah, like NGVR. There's a bunch of names being thrown out, but it'll get an official name at some point. But it's coming sooner than we expected, because I think earlier in this year, Sony had officially stated that they are working on it, and there will be an announcement sometime this year, possibly early next year. Schedules are all messed up because of a certain pandemic. This one may not even be using some sort of sensing bar. It may use tracking technologies on the helmet, one of which we do know is a down-facing camera that can look at the PlayStation controller, which now has upward-facing light bars opposed to outward-facing light bars. And the controls they did show off, those have a ring light on it, presumably so that the helmet can track the location of the controller in front of you. So there is going to be 3D depth sensing, at least for your arms. The question remains about how about head positional data, which I'm sure they'll have some sort of solution for. The controller itself, which they showed, and you can find details on online, but it's something that looks kind of like what comes with the Quest VR. It's a motion controlled controller with a large ring on it that's going to serve as functional for positional tracking relative to you. And it's also going to have pressure sensitive buttons, which would be really interesting. So at least 3 of the buttons will be able to track whether or not your fingers are actually touching them. And that's confirmed. It just wasn't detailed too much more than saying that there was, touch sensitive buttons that could determine where your fingers were. So what are the rumored specs that came out?
So the rumored specs is that there is a 4K HDR display. It's going to be an OLED, screen, 2 OLED screens, one per eye, with a resolution each of 2000 by 2040, and that those will use a Fresnel lens, there will be a Fresnel lens as a part of that. We're looking at kind of the inclusion of FSR, which is the Fidelity FX Super Resolution, which is related to the technology that does effectively, my understanding is it does upscaling. FSR, I think when we looked into it, Justin, you and I looked into it like a month ago, we're looking at an increase of 10 degrees over the first generation PSVR for the field of view. And that would make it 110 degrees, which apparently is 20 degrees more than, say, the Oculus Quest 2. The other 2 rumors about this are that there will be eye tracking capabilities, which is awesome, and that there will be haptics in the headset to reduce motion sickness. I'm not exactly sure how that's supposed to work, what types of haptics will reduce the motion sickness, but
The one other thing that was worth bringing up was supposedly there's a new initiative from Sony as well
Yeah.
to line up with the PSVR being released, in which they're looking at the AAA titles and trying to have VR incorporation to all of them. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure what this means, but you can look at the past games like Resident Evil uh, 7, which had like a full VR campaign where it went into first person. You play the game in first person view, and there's a handful of other games that did this, but um, they're looking to make sure that their games, especially AAA games that people want to play with or without VR, has that included, so that people who do pick up the VR will have great content to consume with the game, with the
Right.
purchase of PSVR.
Yep. And along with that is apparently there was a note in the leak, or rumor, I should say, that the PSVR 2 or whatever, the NV or NGVR, whatever it is, will be not backwards compatible with the original PSVR. That's not a focus. They might consider bringing forward some of the most popular titles and basically re-implement them, but we're likely looking at a focus, and I think this plays in very well with what you just described as the focus on AAA and making it a part of most of their major titles now. Um, but kind of focusing on AAA and making it like not its own little toy, but more of an integrated experience for all of the games that at least Sony as a major publisher provides. And along with that was an announcement that they're putting serious money behind it this time, for like AAA level amounts of cash, so that it won't be necessarily just all indies doing kind of neat little tests and R&D for them, but actually like, okay, we have enough experience with this that we should be able to create really impactful and incredible experiences with the technology at hand and the power of the PlayStation 5.
So, of these rumored specs, do any of these
Yeah.
seem particularly credible to you?
I think a lot of the hardware specs do, to me, feel pretty darn credible. A lot of it is kind of in line with some of the other technology that's been available on other headsets for a while now. Of course, what hasn't been announced is the price. The technology package does not seem out of this world, like some of the other leaks or rumors we've heard about consoles, in the past. To me, the biggest one was that the LCD screen or whatever is actually an OLED based system rather than just an LED, which makes sense. But it's also like OLEDs, is my understanding, is still more expensive than just standard LEDs.
It's actually
How about
that's
you?
actually
Are there?
one of the interesting parts of it is that Sony, who's on the cutting edge of OLED development for
Oh
the
yeah,
TV segment, um, had actually developed really high density OLEDs for their camera, the Alpha camera line of professional grade cameras,
right.
and they had created, because all those they don't use a mirror lens. They are direct to the viewfinder, so
Hmm.
it's reading off the sensor, and they use these high density OLED screens that they had developed for their high end cameras. So they could be borrowing that tech. Because the tech exists, they developed it, so it wouldn't be that surprising that they'd be able to do it. It's just a matter of cost and how much it would actually cost them to produce a set of VR helmets that um, come in at a price that's reasonable enough for most people to buy into it with PS5.
Yeah. On quick question for you, and I don't think we've had this one kind of prepped, but on the competition side, I has Microsoft announced a VR or other kind of
They specifically
waggle?
said that they're not going to do anything in that space.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean,
all right.
they're obviously there's the HoloLens, but I think this actually leads to
Yeah,
why this might be more credible. Is that for Sony to differentiate themselves from Xbox and any other competitors,
yeah,
uh, they do not have a Xbox Game Pass competitor, and in that Microsoft has dumped in a ton of money to make that a very large value for Xbox owners
yeah.
and anybody else who wants to stream.
On Windows people too. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And Sony now has to grab at the things that it has definite advantages over. So them doubling down and putting more investment into VR and making it a more comfortable environment for more people to enjoy especially because it induces motion sickness and vertigo for some people.
Yeah.
Having a solution to that and doubling down and making the VR platform their like specialty makes their platform more interesting for people than say or like maybe another platform people would buy on top of an Xbox or just exclusively. So I think there's good reason why Sony may be putting a lot more money into the VR this generation and really
Mhm.
try to become a place where you get these exceptional experiences in VR and in regular play experiences. Again, pushing up their chops as like an entertainment group, less than like a service based company.
The reason that I brought up that question was because I said, this feels to me like a way for them to say like, okay, well, we can't really compete on the scale of Azure, the cloud system that is backing Microsoft's Game Pass setup. But we did a good job with the PSVR. That was very popular relative to other VR solutions, and it was effective. And what if we just keep pushing on that, make it even better, and open up doors for game developers, provide them with a fund to get something interesting and that can only be had. Again, this is that exclusivity question. What can you get on the PlayStation that you can't on other consoles? And that's probably what they're really looking for to help differentiate them and appeal to the players.